We hope we have some time for exchange, so feel free to use the chat box. We're going to talk today about a very specific topic, and I would like to say that circular economy is, of course, a term which is relatively new. I believe it entered the European landscape in 2016, if I'm not mistaken, and really caught on very well. Very nice momentum, right? Everybody felt, wow, circular economy is going to provide the solution to a lot of problems, whether that is, of course, shortage of materials, the carbon challenges ahead, and many, many more. And it seems that as we go forward in these crazy times, that actually the pertinence and the relevance of circular economy seems to ever grow. Obviously, now that we are in this war situation, there is, of course, also the shortage, and also after COVID, shortage of raw materials and resources, and that is yet an extra impetus, another reason to really think through about the circular economy. Now, on thinking through, a lot of thinking has been done on the circular economy, but at the end of the day, you know, it's time for practice and actually getting things moving. And then when looking at all the aspects of the circular economy, it is becoming clearer by the day that a lot of things can be happening at the local and the regional level. And that is exactly the focus of today's session. We are going to focus on what can be done, needs to be done, in order to further roll out the circular economy in cities and regions. And if I may start just by throwing in two challenges before introducing you to the program and the speakers. What strikes me very much is that it's quite easy to talk about circular economy, quite easy to think up solutions, but it can be extremely hard work and very difficult to actually implement circular economy solutions, which today we call circular systemic solutions. Quite new term, and interested to hear what that actually means. But really getting it right on the technological side, on the economic side, dealing with markets, dealing with social side, citizen engagement, and not to forget, of course, also how to govern the whole thing, how to include local and regional authorities, national authorities, European authorities, and last but not least, how to finance the whole intervention. So that's one huge challenge, which seems to really be very important to disentangle. So we'll talk a little bit about that from different perspectives. And secondly, what we see is when we talk about circular economy at local and regional level, we tend to often speak about, you know, large cities or advanced regions that have been doing this for a while. And actually the ambition of the group of speakers here is to actually expand that circle and to bring more of those practices available also to perhaps smaller cities, perhaps regions not at the heart of Europe, and to also see how they can become part of this circular economy wave, which tends to be higher and higher. Very good. Okay, let's look at the program. It's quite simple for today. So we have 3 presentations, and after presentations, you know, we will have a debate and some questions. So very delighted, starting from the last speaker. We will have Desislava Kraleva, advisor from the EIB. Just checking. Desislava, are you there?
I'm here. Hello and good afternoon.
Very good. Okay, loud and clear. Fantastic to have you. And we are very keen to hear more about the C3, the Circular City Centre, in just a bit of time. Thank you for being with us today. Before that, we will have the OECD. OECD is, of course, a very well-known institution, but it's also, I would say, remarkable to see that the OECD has been working already on the circular economy. I mean, almost from the beginning, I would say. And it's a pleasure to have you with us, Oriana Romano, head of the unit dealing with those matters at the level of cities and regions. Good to see you. Also to hear you, perhaps, and checking whether indeed you're with us.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jan Martin. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much.
Okay, we look forward to what OECD is doing in this area, and that is actually very exciting. And then we have from Circular City Regions Initiative, Andrea Acquarici, who is with us right now. And I think, Andrea, we are actually quite eager to hear. because we see a lot of acronyms, right? CCRI, CCRI-CSO, Circular Systemic Solutions. So why don't you start explaining what actually all of this is about, and also particularly, of course, how these initiatives, and that's also a question to, of course, the other speakers, can help to really roll out a circular economy and overcome those challenges. Andrea, floor is yours.
Thank you, Jan Martin, and hi everyone. Yes, indeed, my name is Andrea, and I'm working as project manager as this CCRI-CSO, which stands for the Circular Cities and Regions Initiative Coordination and Support Office. And I work as senior consultant at ECORIS. So we can start with the slide. Thank you. And indeed, here the idea is just to present the Circular Cities and Regions Initiative in total, and then the Office of Coordination and Support that is really related to the initiative. So starting basically with the Circular Cities and Regions Initiative, this initiative is part of the European Commission policies on circular economy and has quite strong, let's say, policy and financial framework. So basically starting from the EU Circular Economy Action Plan 2020, where the initiative is explicitly mentioned. Therefore, it's part of the European Green Deal universe of initiative, activities, and concrete policy. Then it's financed also through the Research Innovation Program at the EU level. Horizon Europe is the last one, and Horizon 2020. And the scope of the initiative is, here you can see in bold the word implementation, and that's really what is the focus of the Circular Cities and Regions Initiative, focus on the implementation of what we call circular systemic solution, which is one of these, let's say, new terminology that the CCRI introduces. So what does it mean? The solution are any kind of project, measure, activity, action at the local and regional scale on circular economy, which is systemic, at least for 4 aspects. The solution should include, in principle, different sectors, let's say not only the waste sector and make it more circular, but also including other sectors like making circularity, increasing circularity in buildings, in how I use space in a city, and also in energy, for example. They're systemic also because several actors are involved. Here we are not just only targeting the public authorities, but we are tackling region, cities, territorial cluster, really as representative and actors of specific territories, and try to support them in improving the circularity in this territory. They're also systemic because, again, it's not just only looking at one level of governance, but really looking to all the relevant level of governance at the local level, acting at the local level, both with the support of regions, national level, EU level, and then is also systemic in terms of impact. So here we want a circular economy, which is not just only economically profitable, but is also has positive social and environmental outcome. So in this way, the CCRI created this terminology, circular systemic solution. Now, the other scope of the CCRI is just really to try to find as much as possible linkages, collaboration, cooperation, synergies between whatever initiative, project, organization, cities is already operating at the local and regional scale. So we perfectly know that the CCRI is not the only initiative. On the contrary, it's part of a huge universe of initiative. And the idea here is just really to try to be complementary, of course, and be really strong in cooperation and synergy between this initiative and stakeholder. Then another important scope aim is really to try to identify, valorizing, presenting knowledge, relevant knowledge for a policymaker, for a decision maker, a project promoter that is really interesting to work at the local level, at the regional scale, and implementing the circularity there. And to do so, that's the last scope is like, here we really want to share replicable good practices. For example, one solution that is working in one specific area of Europe, we really try to translate it somewhere else in Europe and maybe beyond the EU, with the philosophy really to having this sort of network, this sort of platform where different actors can really exchange information, good practices, and even challenges for the implementation of the circular systemic solution. Now, what are the services of this CCRI? we are starting now with what the CCRI calls CCRI projects. Basically, a project coming from Horizon 2020, Horizon Euro grants, and are mainly demonstration projects. In the, let's say, terminology of Horizon are innovation action. And these action, they really want to demonstrate circular solution at the local level, which are quite innovative and quasi at the commercial level. This project has really the scope to demonstrate this project, this solution, and pushing them to the commercial level and identify what are the economic, social, and environmental outcomes. Other type of services and other type of project are these project development assistance, which are again part of the Horizon 2020 Horizon Euro grants. And here is really the philosophy to say to provide support to policymaker, project promoter with a circular idea and transform the circular idea to a proper investment, into a proper investment. How? Through economic, financial, technical, and juridical support. And then, so there are several projects starting or about to start in the CCRI universe. And here at the Coordination Support Office, one of the main scope is really to try to coordinate and facilitate cooperation between all these instruments. So in the next slide, thank you. Yeah, here is just really to explain what are the activities of the CCRI-CSO. As you see in the title, coordination and support are quite key word about this office and its activities. So we want to facilitate the cooperation, synergy, complementarities between the pilot group. So basically a pilot group of city, region, territorial cluster that we are selecting now, and I will describe better in the next slide, together with the fellows. And we want to facilitate the cooperation, but also the support to them, and the cooperation with the CCRI project and the society partner. Then, as the CCRI is also a knowledge-related initiative, we really want to facilitate that this relevant knowledge extracted by the CSO, the Coordination Support Office, is disseminated as much as possible in terms of lessons learned, in terms of facilitating a dialogue within wide, let's say, a bigger group of stakeholders, not just only local and regional authorities, but also national authority, European initiative, European institution, private sector, utility, SME, so whoever within stakeholder has a concrete and important role in circular economy at the local and regional scale. So next slide, please. And here is a very, let's say, simple description of how to positioning the services of the CESO, of the Coordination and Support Office. So if I'm a city that is, let's say, the first step towards the path of the circular economy is really to be engaged. And for this, there are many initiatives really focusing on the engagement of city to become a circular city, a circular region, a circular territorial cluster. To have the next step is, let's say, to create a circular strategy. So from the commitment as a city, as a region, I really need to plan what I want to do through a strategy, and then listing all the action that I want to do through a circular economy action plan, the step stays 4 days. Where we are working from the CSO is really the link between the list of action that a city can do and to make this action concrete through circular systemic solution. And that's really where the CSO is focusing on, moving from an action written in a circular economy action plan to the concrete implementation. Again, implementation is really the key word for the CCRI and for the CSO. Next slide. So just to give you a short update on where we are with this initiative, and especially with the CSO activities. Well, we just started the activities at the beginning of the year, so now is the first half year of activities, and we are really into a very exciting exercise, which is the selection of the pilot group and the fellows. Pilot group and fellows will be cities, regions, circular territorial cluster that we receive, and that's the keyword coordination, tailor support from the Coordination Support Office, which means group, individual activities, really to facilitate the implementation of the circular systemic solution. In this way, we really want to transfer technical and human skills, human capacity to the local administration, to the local stakeholders, engage, of course, in doing this not only alone, but also with the cooperation with other city, region, territorial cluster, but especially with the cooperation of CCRI projects and associated partner. And then, of course, we share as much as possible the knowledge, lessons learned with other CCRI or stakeholders anyway, related to the circular economy at the local and regional scale. And of course, provide as much as possible access to this knowledge. Now, the fellows are also cities and region, but with the difference with the pilot group, they won't receive this tailored support, but at the same time, they can be part of the same learning space. They can talk with the pilot, exchange information with them, talk with the CCRI project, with the society partner, and really try to make this network and exchange of information and good practices. And that's a little bit what we are aiming at the circular at the cooperation support office, and together with the CCRI and all the CCRI stakeholders. So I think from my side is the last slide. With the next one, you can definitely contact us using the help desk mail, and you can follow us on the CCRI website and on the CCRI newsletter. So thank you.
Very good, Andrea. Thank you very much. So a new platform to pump around the knowledge, because indeed, as you say, there is already a tremendous amount of knowledge, right? Also, I think as you refer to collected under the Horizon 2020, and now, of course, even more so on Horizon Europe. And it seems indeed that, you know, the initiative is focusing on getting all that knowledge out and make that available also for CIS regions. It's just one question before moving on. Could you perhaps give an example of, you know, one piece of knowledge that could come out from such a research project that can actually be relevant for cities and regions? Because, you know, Horizon is, of course, a research program, and cities and regions may be more practical. So just curious how you see that, and what areas also you think, you know, cities and regions can really benefit from all that knowledge which has been already accumulated and will continue to be accumulated.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. Thank you, Martin. And indeed, two examples actually can be related to the two type of typology of project that we have in the CCRI project. So the demonstration and the project development assistant. So basically in the demonstration, well, what we are expecting from this project is really try to demonstrate concrete circular systemic solution. And what does it mean? It means to understand at the demo level, so the technology readiness level again is quite high, quasi at the commercial level, and that is where you really understand whether a value chain, a product or a process or any scheme at the local level can really be circular, can be sustainable, and especially what are the economic, financial, social, and environmental outcome. For the PDA is a little bit different. PDA, as I said, are instrument that really helps provide the project promoters at the local level with the technical assistant on financial issue, legal issue, and juridical issue, and also technical issue to transform their idea into bankable project, into investments. So these case studies, hopefully they will provide sound knowledge and very relevant knowledge to other project promoter to somehow copy what is happening in a demo, in a PDA, and hopefully to translate these solutions somewhere else.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much for that. So it's indeed, you know, as you say, it's not only theoretical, it's really practical knowledge that is, you know, demonstration information also that can be used for many other cities and regions. And it is, of course, you know, the upscaling that we were talking about right before. So moving on then to our second speaker is Oriana Romano from the OECD Water Governance and Circular Economy Unit. Oriana, you've been working on this topic. You've been battling your head around this fascinating question for a while already. And it will be very good to see how you approach it and also what the OECD is actually able to do in this fascinating domain. So over to you.
Thank you very much, Jan Martin. It's a great pleasure for me to contribute to this debate on how to concretely implement the circular economy beyond the theory, as you mentioned at the beginning. So I'm heading the OECD program on the circular economy in cities and regions. And if we move to the next slide, I'd like just to illustrate what we have done so far. And the program has been moving very fast in the last 3-4 years, I would say. At the beginning of this program, there was not so much talking about the circular economy in cities and regions, but given that I work in the division on urban policies and sustainable development, and as you may know, the OECD is an intergovernmental organization of 38 member countries. We were asked by members to look into the subnational dimensions, because actually is where the actions take place. Cities have several competencies over the circular economy, beyond waste, looking at water, energy, built environment and construction and so on. They spend money in terms of investment that in the future can help avoid lock-in. They are also much more faster compared to national governments in implementing innovation. So for us, the question was, how do we help government then with this transition from a linear to a circular economy, and especially local and regional governments? So as it is typical for the OECD, we have started to gather evidence and collect data. So in 2020, we published a report on the status of the circular economy in cities and regions in the OECD area. And most of respondents, we had 52 cities and regions contributing to an ad hoc survey, but also specific interviews were from Europe. European cities and regions have been quite pushed by the European package on the circular economy to take action, and actually they have a different approach compared to other to cities in or other OECD countries. Starting with this evidence, then we supported specific case studies, like, for example, the last one is the last one was launched at COP26 in Glasgow. Then we looked at Granada and Valladolid in Spain, Umeå in Sweden, Groningen in the Netherlands. I'm sure that many of you on the event today have been already in contact with these cities, and we are also supporting national government in coordinating and establishing dialogues with local and regional governments. So we published a report on Ireland, and we are now working with Italy and Israel. Then we believe that sharing is also a key component of this program, and so we set up the OECD Roundtable on the circular economy in cities and regions. So we have reached the 4th event in 2022, and on top of that, we have also organized specific circular economy event, for example, for the G20. But basically, these events allow national and local and regional governments to get together, and also to hear from experts. We have heard from Walter Stael, from Saskia Sassen, so professors and academics and experts that have been working on the circular economy life for many years, and now they are helping shaping the policies for the future. And finally, because we believe that one cannot improve what cannot be measured, we also developed a scoreboard on the governance of the circular economy to help cities and regions to define the level of progress towards their long-term vision for the circular economy. Next slide, please, just to show that we are perfectly in line what Andrea was highlighting. So this circular systemic approach. In fact, for us, the system is about people, policies, and places. So people, because when it comes to the circular economy, is not just about the government, but it's about all the actors that have an important role to play in the business sector, in the civil society, because it's about changing behaviors, but also expert, academic, and so all those that can help with the innovation. Here we are not talking about a nice green project, we are talking about a transition. So until we don't get everybody on board this transition, it's very hard that it's going to happen on the ground. Then the policies, it's important to look at the circular economy as a let's say a link or fil rouge across several policies beyond waste. And even if we talk about waste, we have to look at the different steps. So it's not just about how to transforming waste into resources, and many circular economy expert, for example, don't even believe that recycling is part of the circular economy because it implies consumption of energy, and actually there is not always an efficient secondary market once products have been recycled. So there is much more attention to be paid on the upstream phases, so how to avoid waste generation and how to keep resources in use. And if we look at this system, that is not about just solid waste, it's about how cities are using land, how they are planning for spaces, for transport, for services, for construction, and this creates indeed a systemic approach. And finally, in terms of places, cities are not isolated ecosystem. So what happens when it comes to the input and output of exchanges of material, resources with the rural area, within the regions, across administrative boundaries? So what are the functional boundaries for the circular economy? These are the kind of questions that we posed ourselves and also to the cities and governments we work with throughout these years. And we came up, moving to the next slide, with a sort of a framework that provides solutions that, of course, they have to be very much place-based. So this is the theory, but then in practice, these have to be very much targeted to the different context, the context that of course varies in terms of geographical, institutional characteristics, but also the capacities of the local government to deal with these steps for making sure that the governance conditions exist when it comes to the circular economy transition. So we suggest local and regional governments to promote the circular economy by identifying and clarifying roles and responsibilities, establishing strategic visions, clearly transfer information and data to civil society, business, because it's only about awareness and transparency that trust can be built. We also suggest cities and regions to be facilitators, and so really create dialogues across levels of government, but also with business and different actors at different scales. And finally, to create the enabling conditions, because from our studies, and in particular the 2020 report on the circular economy in cities and regions, what emerged was that technical solutions are actually feasible and in place. The problem is how to put them in practice. So you need a conducive regulation, you need finance, you need to build capacities and skills, you need to invest in innovation. And so Andrea mentioned demonstration project that can be scaled up. And so you need also data and assessment to learn from these experiences. So to conclude, I just want to show in the next slide a couple of examples. So for example, the case of Glasgow. I think the case of Glasgow was very interesting, and in the case of Glasgow, perhaps many cities can also identify themselves because we started by analyzing the situation in the city that aimed to become the first circular city in Scotland. It's a city that faces a population growth, and it is also a city that faced many problems in relation to polluted land, as it was as it is in the case of the many post-industrial cities in Europe. We analyzed the governance situation in relation to the circular economy, and we find out that basically there was not a system approach, that many municipal departments were working in silos. And so, of course, this is ineffective from a point of view of the use of the technical, the human, and the financial resources. And there were several capacity gaps among public officers that were starting to understand how to apply circular economy principles, for example, in public procurement. So based on the framework that I showed before in terms of promoting, facilitating, and enabling the circular economy, we recommended, for example, to establish transversal working groups across department, mainstreaming the circular economy into the climate plan, because sometimes it's just a matter of establishing synergies rather than reinventing the wheel, and also engaging with stakeholders, like, for example, property developers, in order to experiment and piloting solution for transforming deprived areas. We did the same exercise, the next slide, in Sweden, in Umeå in particular. Again, here the city had a very ambitious strategies of becoming fossil-free by 2040, carbon neutral by 2030, and the idea was to identify how the circular economy could help, given that there were several governance gaps, like, for example, the lack of budget dedicated to the circular economy, but also the lack of awareness across the stakeholders on what to do, how to contribute to this objective of making the city carbon neutral through circular economy actions. So we suggested to develop a strategy. We suggested to transform the public procurement into a green and circular one, to identify regulatory instruments that needed to be adapted to the transition. And actually, one of the first steps taken by Umeå was to define a coordinator for the circular economy within the municipal department. So next slide is just to thank you for the attention. And here you can see several case studies and the impact that these case studies have made in terms of implementing the OECD recommendation on the ground. On the next slide, you can find my contact. And of course, we are happy to create the most of the synergies with the CCRI in order to make sure that our messages and our help for European cities and associate partners can be strengthened and can be actually implemented. So thank you very much for your attention.
Fantastic, Oriana. Thank you so much for sharing these experiences based on so much experience with so many cities in the EU and outside. Very intriguing, but perhaps for another webinar is to hear what are the differences between European and non-European cities, because you're very well placed to compare those. But a lot of messages I took home. One of them is indeed, a more strategic approach. Cities need to start somewhere and to really also focus, I think, on the areas that are really their top concern, like you mentioned, the ones in Glasgow, very, very much so. Okay, a lot. And also what I took home is the fact that it's not only about technology, right? There's a lot of non-technological and I would say governance issues, right? You mentioned also the risk to work in silos, to overcome those, and very important to engage with the people, citizens, and all kinds of groups, market players, developers. So it's a real mobilization effort, right, to get this right. And super good to have some insights from you on that question. And the word systemic also came back clearly there as well. Let's go then to our third, but not last speaker, lead speaker, is Desislava Kraleva. Now, of course, the EIB is very well known as the main European financial institution. And we heard already that finance is also quite a hurdle when it comes to circular economy. But I'm sure, Desislava, you also put the finance in a much broader picture, because the Circular City Center is also an initiative to actually help cities on that journey. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Jan Martin, and good afternoon to everyone. Very happy to be here and to have the opportunity to present to you a little bit what the EIB is doing in the area of circular economy, and specifically from an advisory perspective, because as you rightly said, Jan Martin, it is mostly known for providing advisory, for being the EU bank. But what we figured out from our work on advisory on investment projects is that actually a much bigger hurdle than the availability of financing is the availability of sound and sustainable projects. And this is why the European Investment Advisory Hub was created, specifically to address this gap in the market and to make sure that we provide technical assistance to project promoters at different levels, both at the central, regional, and local levels, to identify, to prepare sustainable investment projects, but also to develop their capacities to do so. So this, what I will be presenting to you today is a specific initiative in the area of circular economy that we have established and are now implementing. And can we go to the next slide, please? This is the Circular City Center, which was launched specifically to support the development of investment activities in the area of circular economy. And this very much relates with the observations already made by the previous two speakers in the event. We have developed the Circular City Center and are implementing it now in a pilot phase to basically address three streams of activity. Next slide, please. On the one hand, we are working on creating new resources and consolidating already existing ones. And I really want to put an emphasis on the consolidation element and the consolidation function of the C3, because the circular economy space is rapidly developing. There are a lot of relevant actors and a lot is taking place at the moment. So we identified a specific need to really provide a consolidated space for at least part of that knowledge and to provide links to and guidance where guidance documents that are relevant can be found. This is one stream of our activity, and you will see on my next slides that there are links to the specific guidance documents that have already been developed under C3. The slides are going to be shared with you afterwards, so I encourage you to follow the links and to explore the two guidance documents. They're available online, they're free of charge, and hopefully they can support the circular activities in your specific towns. The second stream of activity of C3 is what we call circular city advisory programs. And these, in a nutshell, are specific advisory curricula which we have developed for cities at different stages of their circular journey to support them in taking the next steps. I will speak a little bit more about it in the next slides. And the third stream of activity is raising awareness, which we also identified as crucial because, as you, I'm sure, are well aware, there is a lot going on, but we have found out that the awareness about all the various streams, all the various options of support, all the various actors that can support the process is not necessarily always high. So we are also raising awareness what support is available out there and how cities can access it. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, we're working on the C3 at 3 different levels, but my main message here is that the support of C3 is available to the public sector representatives of public sector broadly. So if you're a national authority, national promotional bank, regional authority, a city, please feel free to reach out to us and to engage in a discussion so that we explore how the C3 can support you. We're also developing solutions which will be opened also for the private sector, which is part of our next steps on developing this initiative. Next slide. Here, as I mentioned, I wanted to give you an overview of the individual 3 streams of activity of C3, starting with the development of new resources and consolidation of existing ones. So these are two guidance documents which we have developed in the framework of C3. The second one both of them have been published this year. The second one is brand new. It is from May, and it is a catalog of circular city actions and solutions. I warmly encourage you to consult this document because it provides very interesting overview, I would say. We have tried to make it very comprehensive. It includes more than circular individual city actions and numerous examples, all of them spread across 8 sectors, which have been identified as key for the transition to a circular economy. And many of these cases are quite inspirational. They are all taken from real life, taken from the experience of cities already implementing circular city solutions. So you can visit the guides and consider whether any of these solutions will be applicable to your context. Next slide, please. What I, however, want to really focus on in my input is the Circular City Advisory. And the reason why I want to focus on this is because we have identified from our work on the C3 at the moment that the transition to the circular economy is sometimes a very daunting step, and due to the abundance of resources, due to the abundance of strategies, it is sometimes difficult for cities to identify how to go about this, preparing for this transition. And this is the reason why we put together circular city advisory programs, which are basically curricula designed for cities at different levels of their transition, consisting of 4 modules. These curricula span across 4 months, and the purpose is, in a very hands-on, very collaborative approach with cities, to help them taking into account their specific situation. So these programs are, to a certain degree, adaptable to the individual situations of cities, to help them for their individual situations to decide and to take the necessary steps to advance. Next slide, please. And the next slide. What I want and to advance on the circular transition. So we are now working with the first group of cities, which is currently running until September 2022, but we're already onboarding the next group of cities. So if you feel that you'd like to explore this program in further details and you want to see its relevance for your city, please feel free to reach out to us. Here I have put the email address of the C3 initiative, and you will get it together with the slides afterwards, so that we can explore the applicability of these programs for your context. Next slide, please. I was talking about the different curricula that are available here, and I want to give you a snapshot of the content of these curricula. The first one is really targeted towards beginner cities, and the way we identify beginner cities is pre-development and pre-adoption of a circular economy strategy. And the support that such cities receive over the course of 4 months and 4 workshops is really to help them formulate a circular economy strategy. I want to really stress the collaborative element of the support of the curricula, because this is a very important part of the rationale of how we have designed and how we're implementing the programs. What this means in practice is that we're working with cities on a very equal partnership basis, which means that cities are required to dedicate the necessary time and resources to really take the most out of these programs. The programs themselves are free of charge, but the commitment and spending the time are really crucial for cities to make best use of the support that's made available to them. The second program, we have entitled it Next Steps, Facilitate and Act, and it focuses on identifying specific sectors which can be explored as further action, so that as a result of this curriculum, a pipeline of investment projects is identified. The main assumption of this second curriculum is that the city already has adopted a circular economy strategy and is now working on the next steps. So the last curriculum is focusing on developing specific projects and logically follows the sequence of the first two. So the city has a circular economy strategy. It has identified its priority sectors and a pipeline of potential projects, and is now actually working on developing these potential projects to a bankable stage, which very much links to what Jan Martin was mentioning at the beginning, that ultimately our objective is to support cities to improve their chances of attracting financing for their projects. So these three curricula are all being run on a pilot basis with the pilot cities. That's why it is very important for us to expand the group of cities that are participating in these curricula and develop them further in a way that is going to be most adapted to the actual needs on the ground. Our ultimate goal at the end of the day is to have programs which are practical, which are useful, and which really help translate the theory into actions, as Oriana was also mentioning earlier in her intervention. Next slide, please. I'd like to spend just a couple of seconds here telling you about the awareness raising, which I mentioned at the beginning. We have also identified as being particularly important for cities to be aware of the various support options that are out there available for them. We, as part of our activities on raising awareness of the circular economy support, we are organizing a series of webinars. This year we have had already 2 webinars, one in February, one in May, and they're planning 2 more by the end of the year. So if you're interested, I invite you to check our website, where we publish in a timely manner information about the upcoming webinars, and to register for attendance to those webinars. We are also using them as an opportunity not only to present and to update on the activities of C3, but also to invite cities which are working on various circular issues to present, to share their experience, to share their obstacles, to share their successes and their lessons learned, because we're aware that it's a learning curve, and we want to make sure that we present as many relevant examples that can be useful for other cities as possible. Of course, if you have any specific needs which are relevant for your city, if you have any topic which you consider very important, we're very open to receiving suggestions and to receiving recommendations about how to develop these webinar series further. With this, I'd like to conclude, moving to the next slide, which is basically a summary slide for you to take away from the presentation that will be shared. It gives you information about how you can contact us, how you can express your interest to participate in the C3, and how you can stay up to date on the various activities which we're working on. We're also working on these activities in close cooperation with CCRI. We're also in close contact with the OECD, so that we make sure that we're well informed and aligned about our respective lines of work. With this, I say once again, thank you for the attention. And if you have any questions, please feel free to share them.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Desislava. That is very insightful. I'm aware of the time. We have a little bit less than 10 minutes left, but I deliberately, thought it would be good to let you speak and also to think through what you say. And it seems there's a lot of things that you have in common, but perhaps the best way to make use of the remaining time is to pose each of you the same question. And I think that's the question which is inspired by Silje Oosterbreu in the chat, right? So suppose you are, let's say, a medium-sized city, right? Or a smaller city, like, a city like, let's call Bergen in Norway, right? To stay close. And you suppose you're a new mayor, right? And there's a question to all 3 of you. And, nothing has been done on the circular economy. What is the single most important thing? Where would you start as a new mayor in that city to actually get going? And I think I have some ideas, but it would be very good to hear from you that. So if you can be short, that would be very interesting. Andrea, in this situation, where would you start rolling out the circular economy in this particular case?
Well, maybe I will start from facilitating a constructive dialogue, let's say, as a basis for action. So this means know exactly who is doing what or who is not doing something, where the actors are in the department, and then actually identified as a second step a common aim towards which all the actors can go, cooperate together, and to do so, third steps, maybe definitely divide clearly tasks and having the clear objective, then is a nice way to start, in my opinion.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Andrea. Oriana, I mean, that must be music to your ears, but I'm sure you could phrase it differently.
First, just to highlight that indeed we have been working mostly with small and medium cities. So it's not just mega cities that are interested in transitioning from the circular economy. Sometimes this dialogue that Andrea rightly mentioned, as it was also my answer, but I will add to that. This dialogue is sometimes easier in this kind of context where the links are even more visible because it's a small environment. On top of the dialogue, perhaps the first thing that I would do as a mayor is to have a nice meeting with the different department and see how to overcome this so-called silos, these very famous silos, and to make sure that it is all the people working in the cities have very clear on how they can apply circular economy principles to different areas on which they work, be they spatial planning, climate change, transport, and so on. So probably the dialogue and also the identification of how to create synergies within the city's activities and policies.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. This is Lava. What would be your answer to this question?
Okay, I'm not going to reinvent the wheel here because my first answers have been to identify who are your relevant stakeholders and to gather them together really around the same table to speak and to identify your priorities. But what I want to mention is that actually this is the first thing we ask all the cities that are participating in the Circular City Advisory programs to do, because otherwise it's very difficult to actually work towards a common goal if you haven't identified properly your stakeholders and you haven't identified that common goal really. So what we also recommend is to identify a circular champion that is really able to take forward the topic and to be your advocate in the city. And this is also very important because sometimes this issue with silos that Oriana was mentioning is quite common, and it can create really a lot of issues in implementing meaningful solutions on the ground if you have not been able to address it upfront. And the second thing that I would do as a new mayor is really to identify the priority sectors with which I'd like to start as a second thing. And last point, addressing the the issue with mid and small sized cities. Actually, one of our very good examples of circular advisory assignments that we have implemented is with a very small city, the city of Kolding in Denmark. And I'd like to use it as an example of a city which is small but very ambitious and has been able to advance quite a lot in a very short period of time. So my message here is don't be discouraged or don't let the size of your city or the geographical location of your city stop your circular ambitions.
Absolutely. Just a very practical question, and to both Oriana and this is Lava, as you've been working so much with cities already. So in this case of this mayor, it seems you all agree on the right way forward, which is great, So the first thing is you speak with the people with your population and with everywhere. So what is a nice hook actually to start with this? I mean, what your problem is or a solution, because where to start in such a dialogue and how to actually engage. Can you just give one example of how you can really effectively engage with citizens on this topic? Is it from a problem, or is it from a potential or opportunity? I mean, you've met so many examples, so many cities you've worked in. Would be nice, just one example would be nice.
Well, just to respond to your question based on our actual work, when we work with the city, we ask the local government with whom we are in touch to provide us with a list of stakeholders, with several groups of stakeholders. So we want to talk with the business sector, want to talk with the academia, we want to talk with everybody. I mean, possibly within a city. But the point is that we don't ask about a circular economy as such. So for us, it's about talking to them about their own activities. And then it's up to us to identify the challenges and the opportunities for the circular economy, because the circular economy is just an umbrella concept based on an efficient use of resources and avoiding waste and contamination. But there is not such a circular economy as such. The economy is made circular by all these actors that can actually change their business as usual. So they will continue to, they talk to us in the sense that they express the way they work and the challenges they face with resources management and with waste management. And then it's up to us to identify, this is a good opportunity or this is a challenge if the city would like to transition to the circular economy and support this business to change the business as usual and to move to something else. But there are people who are not aware of the overall concept of the circular economy, and we absolutely don't force them to talk about something that they're not aware of. Or maybe sometimes they do work on the circular economy, but they don't call it as such. So there is no way to, there is not such a solution in this case.
Okay, thank you so much, all three of you, for the contributions. It's already time. Time is flying, but I think we learned a lot. So I learned from this that, you know, it's not about talking around in circles. It's really about talking about resource flows, the issues that real people have, and then from them work through a strategy. And from the strategy, which includes all the actors, to really come with very concrete projects, sound projects, we heard this as Lava, right? And systemic solutions that end there, then at the end, you know, that can be invested, can be taken forward, and that can just help, you know, to take all of this step by step forward. And it's not only large cities, it's also small cities, particularly small cities may actually be able to move faster. So thank you very much. Thank you all for having been with us in this 1 hour. Been a real joy. Here you see the various links. There's much more to come. So stay with us. Do sign up to the newsletter. And good luck on your circular journey. And very keen to hear more from you also in the upcoming events and webinars. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.